What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Master Crafted. Today we're going to be talking about all Layout 5, man, everything about it, where you want to deploy, how you want to play it, and, how to really try to leverage some positions and, win some games. Phil, how you doing today, buddy?
Lane, I'm great. It's good to see you. I'm looking forward to getting very, very close to what is the end of this series. We only have 3 more layouts after this one, 6, 7, and 8. And those are some really, really spicy layouts, and a lot of them are new. But this one is interesting as well because it's another long board edge deployment, which we don't see very often.
No, we do not. And, for good reason, we think, but, there is a chance you're going to see it, so we might as well prepare you for it. So let's go ahead and we'll just dive right in. Are we going to be starting off with Dawn of War, it looks like? All right. Heck yeah. All right. So when you see this, what are you thinking when you roll up the table and layout 5 is on the board?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one because for me, the first thing I'm thinking is the staging areas inside my deployment zone are relatively safe, right? Because we do have 2 very large line of sight blocking pieces of terrain that cover a good amount of space that if our opponent wanted to get to, there's not a reasonable access that, we have a slight pocket there, right? There is another angle here to come down and shoot, but there is space back there to deploy in a relatively advantageous position. Both middle objectives feel great for infiltrators, right? Like, I love this position for infiltrators. I love this position for infiltrators. I even like being on the other side of this wall. I think all 3 of those locations, and obviously, depending on the unit, I don't mind being in the terrain as well, as long as I can prevent myself from being seen, because this 2-inch wall section does protect us unless our opponent is wholly within it. So, like, right off the bat, I'm thinking, yeah, I would say mildly reasonable. I would be okay with this layout. And the other thing, probably the last thing that stands out to me, is just how exposed this middle is. We've said it in a few layouts, but holy crap, you could get to it with, like, from being inside your own deployment zone. There's lanes here. There's lanes if you're in this terrain, you're on the second floor, right? Like, you can shoot down. So this middle objective is quite exposed and does not feel like it's a place where I can consistently hold it. So
yeah, it definitely feels a lot safer than layout 3. That is for sure. I feel way more comfortable starting with most of my assets on the board. Lots of little pockets to start in and be relatively safe. Again, I think the left side is probably a little bit safer as far as initial deployment, all the way behind that left bottom ruin or the top right ruin, depending on which way you're looking at it. I think those are the best places to start with some of your bigger things that aren't infantry that can't just run through the wall. But you're definitely still free to put something to the right of the small ruin, the 2-inch wall that's sitting there, and be relatively pretty safe from a lot of things. Like, I think it's a very convenient deployment zone. And I think the other nice thing is, this map feels a lot more like we're playing for denial most of the time, especially early. These objectives are extremely exposed out in the open, especially like if personally, I would try to, as long as I can make sure I'm screened, I would really like to push a Dorn up to sit horizontally behind that 5x10 ruin that's out in the midboard, and just be able to shoot across to the right objective from there, if I can do that without a legitimate melee threat being able to touch me, or being shot down that exact same lane by equivalent, maybe like a repulsor executioner or something that can really do a lot of damage. If I can secure that spot and be able to put fire across the board there, that is a very great pocket if you can secure it.
Yeah, totally agree. We do have some really good staging locations here. And you are right. We've noticed a trend, and I would say this is almost the same across all of the long board edge layouts, where it's like your natural is not actually your natural. Where your opponent can very easily trade on your objective, and there's really nothing you can do about it. You have to be dominating that side of the board, so you have to be pushing out on that side of the board and flip the board to make sure that you can hold that objective. So, for example, let's just say hypothetically, right? Like, I start a few of my assets here up to this edge, and I try to push out onto this objective to make sure that I can hold it. Maybe I have one behind the profile, and the other like on the objective actually holding it. Well, it takes very little for my opponent to either try to out OC me, depending on the unit that I put out there, or to just like actually be able to threaten that objective, because they could very easily just have a unit staged right here, just like Lane was saying with his Rogal Dorn, but it could be anything. It could be Bulgrin, could be Death Guard Terminators, it could be Gene Stealers, or whatever the case. It doesn't matter, right? Like we're speaking in generalities here, but they could either get on that objective and out OC me, because I would have to be either exposed on that objective if I wanted to put maximum OC on it, or I could put like very little OC on it and try to obscure as much as possible, but that would allow my opponent to very easily out OC me. So if we talk about the effort that it takes our opponent to actually flip these objective, it's nothing, which means I need to push beyond, and you've seen this trend in a few videos that Lane and I have done. We need to push beyond this objective to make sure that we can still hold it. So right when I said like, hey, I love this position for infiltrators. Well, that's not just for like early scoring to get area denial. If we get area denial early and we need to go out there or establish locust or secure no man's land, that's to make sure that I can push this screen out as far as possible. And I don't care if they die, as long as it means that my opponent cannot flip my primary for a turn, because I can very easily flip my opponent's primary. And this is definitely a game, depending on your army and what your army is trying to do, that's what I'm looking to do. I'm trying to push beyond the subjective, because if I don't, you're just going to walk on it, and that's incredibly annoying.
Yeah, it definitely does pay off. I think there is enough cover to, kind of castle and just play your side of the board, but you're going to have a very hard time ever holding your primary if you do that. Like, you can keep your assets safe that are, you need to protect as far as like your big tanks and things like that into the late game, but you're not going to be able to hold those objectives for any of those turns that you're doing that. So instead of playing that, I agree with Phil. Personally, I think you have the flexibility to push either side on this board, which is nice. And it really just kind of depends on how fast you are, how quickly can you round those corners, and kind of what is your shooting support and what is your actual screening support. Because being able to take that space, like Phil was saying, if you have infiltrators that just go jail and really take that space in a turn, that can very easily help you flip that board and secure one of these sides a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were playing this, that's what I would suggest, right? Like if your goal is, if you're going first, you need to secure this objective. If you are going second, you could very easily play the castle game and just deny. That way you and I are always on one objective. And then at the end of the game, turn 5, well, I score at the bottom of 5, and there's nothing you can do to stop me, really. So I'm walking onto all these objectives. I'm out-seeing you as long as I played correctly and I have assets left. If I'm going second on this board edge, I am more than happy to castle up, and I want you to make the first move if you're the player going first, because I can punish a lot of things, and I don't really have to trade, because as long as the game is close going into 5, I will win that game.
Yeah, and I think that's another great point. Like, if you see this at a tournament, this would make you think, even as maybe more of an elite army player, be like, hey, maybe I don't take quite as many hammer units. I take 2 or 3 more trading units to just keep playing that game of being able to go deny more than I would on, other layouts and deployments. Is just realizing that this terrain is just so beneficial for being able to just be like, okay, cool. Well, I'm safe way over here, but it's really not that far for me to go deny in the middle.
Absolutely not.
Make that part of the game plan.
Yeah, you got some great staging areas here, right? This here, even I love being behind these little 2-inch walls, because they're great. They're line of sight blocking as long as you're off the profile. So like these staging areas mean that I can get after every objective, and that's 6 inches outside of my deployment zone, right? That is not far at all. And I can very easily get after all 3 objectives, compared to a lot of other deployments where that is not possible. Those objectives are a lot further away, and you can't reasonably get after them. So this is like, yeah, I would say like Drakari really love this layout, because it's like, well, they have a lot of trading assets and they're so hyper mobile. It's like, they don't really care. If you go out into an objective, they will kill you. And it's just a constant state of, being able to deal with that. And, I would definitely recommend Lone Op, but you need a lot of OC in layouts like this. Trading pieces like Lane said are great. But this is a tough layout for sure. So you better have a game plan of like, hey, if I got to lock down this objective, well, that means I pretty much need to lock down like this quarter of the board. Obviously, your own quarter, right? But I'm looking to dominate that half of the board because that's really, against a good player, the only way that you're going to be able to hold that objective for any sustained period of time.
Yeah, because really you're looking to flip the board to where you're playing long edge, to where you can actually be on that little tiny sliver that's, if we're using the left objective, that is just to the left of that L, to where you can't even get shot from like their home very easily. Like you've pushed far enough that you've threatened their home. They can't really be on there with anything of much value, and you've pushed all the way around. That's like one of your only ways to really sit safely on there, unless you're playing with terrain pieces that are bigger than they should be. But
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next one, Lane.
yeah. All right. Good old tipping point. Fairly similar, just a little easier to flip that board.
Absolutely.
And you definitely pick one direction specifically.
Lane, what direction would you pick?
We're going clockwise. If I'm the green player, we're just gunning up that left side, really going to make sure, because the other thing here too, especially like if I'm playing my guard and stuff, if I'm able to start a Dorn right there on the line behind that 2-inch ruin, and you have anything that's sitting out there, you're not very safe. As long as I can roll up and get my, my barrel past, or part of it, depending on what terrain you have, or if I need a +3 to move, even just +3 to move and, giving myself rerolls to hit, I'm going to be efficient enough to pick up a lot of stuff that you just kind of have sitting there whenever I want to. But, that is matchup dependent. I might not be able to threaten you that wholeheartedly, but it's not going to take much to still be in a similar scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those ones where, like, yes, going this way does feel a lot better in some ways. But it's like, okay, well, if I sit on this side of the objective, that does mean my opponent on their home can threaten me there. So really, I want to be inside this terrain, right? So I can't be shot by everything that's over here. And then on top of that, but if I'm in that terrain, that means I can get shot here. There are lines of sight. So going this way and like holding on to that objective is not the way you need to do it. You need to push fully all the way through, because I'm trying to do the same thing on this side. Even if on this side, even if I don't give up, even if I push past this objective, I'm trying to kill the things that come out onto this natural, because that's the objective I'm looking to trade on. So like, I have assets, shooting assets here and here, where I'm just like, okay, well, you can't hide, because if you sit there, I'm going to kill you. And then maybe I have a combat unit or something quick that I could push up onto this objective if my opponent decides to come onto that profile. So I'm trying to do both of those things while pushing the edge, because you're right, Lane, that is, obviously matchup dependent and how your opponent deploys. But like, this is a great area for me to be. As well as here, right? Like in all of these areas, I can stage and really lock down this half of the board and just say, okay, everything from here on in, that's mine. You don't get to touch it. Don't even look over here. Like, it's my objective. And I'm going to keep pressuring my opponent to do that. And as long as I, depending on how I build my lists, right? As long as I can like stop you here and prevent you from scoring and being on that objective with some good shooting units and good combat units and trade efficiently, you'll be in a good position to win the game.
Yeah, I really think on this layout too, whether it's like a unit, for me, I would definitely always have a unit of Catachans that are basically starting in that bottom right corner to just get up there and be a very safe wave. Like, you're going to really have to commit and come all the way around that corner to get to me if I'm starting there, or like where Phil just marked, like some JPIs for some people, things that are super fast. I just need to get assets up and safely behind that ruin if I can, or maybe some infiltrators that have the ability to just walk up there and stuff. So yeah, where he's at now, I want to scout from there with some Catachans, make it to where if you want to come deal with them, you're going to have to come all the way around that terrain piece, and then I can deal with you a little bit more safely, even from kind of around my home terrain piece, and still draw lines of sight pretty easily, because you're going to have to overcommit. You still need those denial pieces over on that right side, and just trying to make them as safe as possible in their staging, and hopefully be able to, like Phil was talking about on the first layout, be able to maybe have a set of infiltrators over there they're just going to go screen. If you go top of turn, you are going to prevent them from being able to get started on turning the board on that side, while you're able to really take space on that left side, hopefully. And the other thing, personally, like looking at this terrain layout, I'm probably going to try to keep a Dorn off the board, potentially for like a rapid ingress threat after I've kind of maybe pushed that left side and I've secured some area, being able to then reactively be like, okay, cool, I've taken enough space, because I'm not going to be able to force 3 or 4 tanks around that left side. I don't really need to. I'm hoping to get maybe 2 across there, but I want to have 2 that are easily, kind of protecting my home, denying that natural objective on the right side, while trying to take enough space, get enough room that I can, get a second tank over there. It's just going to be very hard to safely get 2 tanks up that left side. So trying to just really make it one and then hopefully bring another in later, I think that's a very plausible way to go about this map, is keeping maybe a little extra off the board.
Yeah, no, definitely on these layouts, a little bit of more units in reserve might serve you well, especially if your goal is to flip the board, and then using those units reactively, especially with some big profiles like Rogaldorns are. Lane set it, like infiltrate. There's only a few armies that I'd be comfortable leaving home without infiltrate. I did it with my Custodes at the last team tournament. They did rather well, but it's not something I'm super confident without, and I really like to have because it allows me to maintain space in the game. And the majority of armies need something like that. So yeah, absolutely. I would be hesitant to play any of these layouts without infiltrate. This one is okay, but still, I probably want to infiltrate because I want to put them like behind this wall. Probably, I want to put them inside this L. That way, it can go out and get area deny easily turn 1 with a cheap asset. I want to like infiltrate here behind this wall or this profile. That way, I can get onto this objective and maintain space, because I can't let my opponent try to flip the board like I'm trying to, because then it just turns into another stalemate unless I'm going second, and then I'm perfectly fine with a stalemate if I'm going second.
Yeah, you definitely want to deploy to, be ready. If I go first, I need to be able to take that space, really flip the board. And then if you don't, you can just kind of slowly shift your assets back, across the bottom of the board, and really be able to, hold down the middle. Another thing, which we did talk about on layout 3, nothing's changed. You're probably going to need a lone op to sit on your home, because it's still in the open. For certain assets, there are some angles you can make it tough to see you, but for the most part, it really isn't that safe. It is not hard to shove one asset up there and kill a 5-man of intercessors or something like that at some point if they really want to. Playing linchpin or something like that on this. I'm not sure what the exact missions they have for tipping point are, I guess, but it's not super safe to be on your home.
No, it's terrifying for sure. Yeah, you got to have something incredibly tough or make it sticky. That would be another great thing. If you can make your home objective sticky, that would be, strongly recommended. Then you can use your lone op a little more aggressively, but all of those things come down to the list building phase when you put together your list and you see the player pack, as Lane and I have said, as Cody has said, as Colin has said, as everyone that's come on, I think that we brought on for Mastercrafted, they talk about how important the list building step is, because if you don't list build with a plan, well, then you're, behind the 8 ball. And you can't do that if you want to continue to be successful. It doesn't matter at the top table or the bottom table. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as you have a plan, you're going to be a lot better off. And there's a lot of armies that, like, you can combine the thematicness of what you want to run with a good plan and a good list building strategy and be successful. So don't let themes stop you from building good lists. If you have a plan, a good themed list will be very, very successful.
Yes, and also you can just do what Phil does and convert half your army anyway. So then there's the theme. You just really go hard on that, and you can do whatever you want. Just get into conversions, and you can have all the theme you could ever want. All right, yeah, I think that pretty much covers it. I mean, I feel like 5 is fairly straightforward. Just immaculate staging points. Honestly, like, holy cow, is it so easy to just move units onto those objectives? Like, probably one of the easiest layouts to do so. It seems very, very easy to just keep denying, especially out of those center terrain pieces. But yeah, I think that's all we got for you. But thanks again for stopping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already, and join our Discord, which is in the description below. And in the meantime, do not forget that victory isn't given; it is forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted.